Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Long Beach Symphony's Musically Speaking, hosted by our music director, Eckart Preu. My name is Kelly Lucera, president of the Long Beach Symphony, and we are excited to bring you this virtual series featuring interviews with world-class performers, conductors, and composers, combined with artistic topics relevant to today's world. This evening, we are thrilled to welcome a very special guest, the multi-talented musician, actor, and David Letterman's sidekick, Paul Shaffer. Thanks to our good friend Craig Doherty and Doherty Company Insurance Brokers, we look forward to welcoming Paul to our pop stage as soon as possible. And now, please welcome to our virtual stage, Musically Speaking host, Long Beach Symphony Music Director, Eckart Preu, and our very special guest, Mr. Paul Shaffer.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you, Paul Shaffer, for being here with us today. Paul, I'm so thrilled to speak with you because it is unfortunately very rare that worlds like ours collide, and I figure it's kind of fun. You are a Canadian-born singer, composer, an actor, comedian, and multi-instrumentalist, best known for serving as David Letterman's musical director, band leader, and sidekick for over 30 years. You're an icon in the entertainment industry, and you went from being a band member in your hometown of Thunder Bay, Ontario, to Broadway as the musical director of Godspell, to Saturday Night Live, and ultimately Letterman. But I understand that at the very beginning, you started out, like everybody does, kind of studying piano at the Royal Conservatory in Toronto, also theory and harmony. How formal were those studies, and how did these studies at the conservatory influence the direction of your musical career? Maybe away from classical, I don't know. Who were some of your early musical mentors who inspired you?
Well, Eckart, first of all, hi. But as legit as it sounds, the Royal Conservatory of Music it was a building, a school in Toronto, Canada. I was way up in the hinterlands, if you will, of Thunder Bay, 1,000 miles northwest. So really what I was doing was taking piano lessons, and they had a series of books and courses, the Royal Conservatory, and grades, a grading system. And they would send out examiners up into the Northlands once a year and everybody would practice up pieces, scales, sight reading, ear training, and such, and take the exams each year, and then pass on to the next grade of the Royal Conservatory. So really my training consists of nothing more than private piano lessons at home, and getting into a little bit of rudimentary theory and what they called grade 3 harmony up there. And boy, it stood me in good stead, because outside of one summer in which I took a course called arranging, jazz arranging, I guess, in Toronto, when I finally did get there to go to college, I didn't have the nerve to even go into music at the University of Toronto. Well, my sight reading wasn't, and still isn't really. It was always a stumbling block. I'm a sociologist major, sociology, philosophy, if you will, psychology. But I took this one jazz arranging course in the summer after first year, and I'm glad I did, because that's, I got dropped into the studio scene in New York City in the 70s by some stroke of luck, and just had to learn like you drop a kid into a swimming pool. I learned how to swim. Go ahead.
Yeah, how did you learn though? I mean, for us as classical people, we have our scales and we have this very regimented kind of way of learning the instrument. How did you learn? Now, how did you get your chop?
I did that, and I practiced my scales, and I do have classical chops to some degree, and I have knowledge of music. And when you ask about mentors, well, I got my parents. It's so obvious. First of all, my mother, who always had music playing in the house. Her music was, Broadway, Ethel Merman, Mary Martin at Carnegie Hall, that album. and her classical music, her Chopin and Debussy. She exposed me to this, And then my dad, who was a lawyer up the north in Thunder Bay, on Sundays, well, he would put on his music, which was the great jazz vocalists of America, like Billy Eckstine and Ray Charles and stuff. And he turned me on to those people. So they were really an inspiration. Then when I heard rock and roll, well, this was my music, and I began to learn it by ear.
Yeah.
Just learning the 3 chords, that comprised it in its entirety back in the 50s, and then gradually learning along as it became more sophisticated, and then realizing that it's all related. It's the same musical rules, and you can only break them if you know what you're doing when you do so. And, it's all the same. And, we happen to like perfect fifths, because it's consecutive fifths in rock, We know what we're doing with them. They make us want to dance. Yeah. So it all, in school, I'm taking sociology, but realizing this isn't for me. And I made that deal with my parents. Give me 1 year to try music. Maybe, and if I'm starving at the end of the year, I'll go back to maybe grad school or something. And I played just what they called jobbing gigs up in Canada, bar mitzvahs and weddings and nightclubs. And then just by accident going to accompany a couple of girlfriends who were auditioning for an off-Broadway show called Godspell, 1972, a Jesus rock musical. Very nicely done, and a big hit. And they were going to have a Canadian company. And I went to accompany these 2 gals. And Stephen Schwartz was the name of the composer. He has Wicked. Well, before the pandemic, Wicked was the longest running show in history, I think. Anyway, he was there for the final auditions. I heard me play a song accompanying this girl singer and said, I want to talk to that piano player. And he asked me to play the rest of the auditions as like the house piano player, which I did all by ear, because it's struggling with anybody who brought a chart. But I knew all the songs that people were singing. A lot of them sang Aquarius from Hair. That was the era. And some Neil Young. And then he hired me to conduct the band. Well, it was only a rhythm section, a 4-piece band. And that was how I started to learn. And then he brought me to New York. And I just, I rocked my way into a job on Saturday Night Live and stuff. He brought me to New York. I played Broadway in 1974 first.
Right. And how did that work out with getting into Saturday Night Live? I mean, how did you come across these opportunities? It was just because your name just got around, or did you have an agency or mentors who kind of launched you these opportunities?
Name got around. And I just knew, the one thing I knew, you got to take every gig and play every gig, even if you got to pay them to play. Maybe somebody will hear you, that was so I was doing these auditions, for people, $20, and we would rehearse and learn a song together and go. And that was just one of the things I was doing. Got this Godspell show. And then all of a sudden I was in theater, if you will, in Canada, and I started getting other shows. And one show where there was a sax player, like a ringer brought in by the producer, used this kid on sax, and his name was Howard Shore. And we hit it off, and he became an Academy Award-winning movie composer, this guy, Howard Shore. But at the time, 1975, he came to New York from Canada to do the band of Saturday Night Live. He was the musical director. I was already in town because Stephen Schwartz had brought me here to do the magic show on Broadway, and I got that call from him to do SNL. And I said, Howard, I can barely read, He said, don't worry, there'll be rehearsal. He encouraged me, and I accepted the gig, and that, that's how it happened.
So can you tell us a little bit about how, you always talk about auditions. So for instance, let's say, you were the music director of The Late Show with David Letterman. How, even like where I'm from, I'm from East Germany. I mean, I knew who you were in East Germany, which is kind of a
Amazing.
scary thought if you think about it.
Yeah, I am a little scared, but go ahead.
But I mean, how do auditions work? How did it work for the show with David Letterman? And was he actually there, or who does those auditions?
You mean, well, you're talking about how I got that job.
Yeah.
In the case of Letterman, I had done these 5 years on Saturday Night Live.
Right.
He was looking for a band leader. He had seen some of the things I had done on SNL because I was sneaking on camera and trying to get into sketches. And, one famous thing that actually he referred to was a Bill Murray, the actor, was on SNL at that time and used to do a lounge singer bit with me on piano, and I helped him, and Letterman kind of remembered that. And so, he brought me in for a meeting and we hit it off. And I had a couple of meetings with him actually.
Right.
And he now says he knew that he wanted to hire me at that, just from seeing me on SNL.
Right. So it was not really a musical audition per se. It was more like if he could interact with you, because that was part of of the shtick that you guys did. I mean, just interacting with each other.
Well, now that you mention it, I think you're absolutely right. I hope that he knew that I could play the piano, from just the fact that I had held down a job on SNL for that long. Yeah. And I will admit that, the scene on the talk shows and the variety shows has changed a little bit. You don't necessarily have to read music anymore, to have a band. It wasn't the case. This is the 70s. It was still really pretty legit. And there was a contractor, and there, we were members of Local 802, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know why I got into that, but what was the question? I got carried away.
I mean, it was really like how you and David interacted.
Oh, yes. And I was saying that. Besides that, though, yes, he thought that I might be a funny guy by seeing me on SNL, that I was in sketches. And when we hit it off, you're absolutely right. It was all about how we would get along. Now, on camera, had I not been able to handle a band in some way, who knows what might have happened. Right. But yes, and it reminds me that my successor in that time slot, of course, the whole time slot has been taken over by Stephen Colbert. Right. And his band leader is a wonderful guy, John Baptiste, who a well-known New Orleans musical name, and family, and quite a schooled, Juilliard schooled cat himself. Yeah. And he asked me to have lunch with him when he was up for the job, and said, "What's important?" And I said, what's important is if you and Stephen get along. It's as simple as that. Yeah. And you nailed it, Maestro, just a second ago. You're absolutely right. In that case, yeah. And so I guess, being a little bit versatile certainly helped me. Yeah. And the fact that I picked up an awful lot from the guys and the cast of that Godspell show in 1972, Canada. Turned out it was a very special cast with performers that are now quite well known in the US. Many of them moved here. But if I can name, Eugene Levy, who with his son, Dan, has that wonderful show, Schitt's Creek, a huge hit now. Yeah. Martin Short was in this show. Dave Thomas from SCTV, Andrea Martin, the late Gilda Radner, who later went on to Saturday Night Live. And we all became dear friends. And I just, after hanging out incessantly with them, picked up a little bit and started to be able to take advantage of, if you needed somebody playing the piano and a sketch on SNL, but can I say something, and maybe I'd get a line. I'm no fool, and here we are, and it all went by.
And I mean, and acting actually has become, part of your career. I mean, it's you start in the 1977 CBS sitcom You're at the Top, and then also in shows like Ed and Sopranos and Law and Order and How I Met Your Mother. And you did also voiceovers,
Yeah,
for Hermes. From Disney's animated movie Hercules.
exactly. My goodness, yeah.
Yeah.
You've done some homework, Maestro. I appreciate it. And one thing kind of led to another,
Yeah.
getting onto Godspell, picking up, learning how to be funny a little bit like those kids. Then getting an opportunity, a guy, who had been an actor in Godspell, say, hey, there's a musical show, A Year at the Top. It's going to be about musicians. Maybe you could, I know you can, play, but maybe if you read a couple of lines, maybe you could be in this because they want real musicians. And then I got that experience. And then I got to be in one thing led to another. Thanks for asking, though.
Yeah. And I mean, and now actually, I mean, you've been kind of reinventing yourself again. I mean, we both come from very, maybe not so different worlds, but from my standpoint, it's quite different what you do, and your skill set is quite different from mine.
We sort of started out in the same world,
right?
And then we diverged.
Yeah. And so some people who watch this might be asking themselves, why is the conductor of the Long Beach Symphony interviewing you? And it is because you were supposed to perform together with the Long Beach Symphony, as part of our Pops series this season, together with Motown legend Valerie Simpson. And it's incredibly
Valerie
sad.
Simpson, yes.
Yeah, it's incredibly sad this won't happen.
Everything exploded, and we have no concerts anymore. Would that have been a dream come true for me, though? I was going to get to work with your band.
And you will. I hope you will consider coming maybe next season or so, or whenever we are back playing.
Well, of course I will, because your orchestra is legendary. The quality of the players, their proximity to Los Angeles, the kind of work that I understand they do, which is all kinds of work, that only happens in Los Angeles. Maybe not even in New York. Don't tell them I said that here in this, but these are some players you got out there, and I can't wait till we get this COVID thing behind us and we can have shows again. I would love to come and work with you.
Why are you interested in orchestra? Because I mean, you've been with bands so much, and they're so easier to manage in many ways. What fascinates you about the orchestra? I mean, do you conduct? Is that kind of one of your? It's like acting. You always wanted to act. You always wanted to conduct, or
well, I mean, who hasn't? The older among us remember Danny Kaye, and everybody thinks they're a conductor, and Jerry Lewis. Of course, and I've had a little experience. Well, the Grand Funk Railroad with a symphony orchestra, if that almost counts. But once you have a drummer, a trap drummer, then it's all all bets are off. He becomes a conductor, really. Don't tell him.
And they know it. I know they know it.
Yes, but there is something about that many souls, whether you can get 40 people together or 70, everyone playing together under the direction of one guy and trying to focus and give him what he wants. And if everybody can do that, there's nothing like that feeling. And I've had it a couple of times in my career, and you just want more of it. It's addicting. That's all I can say.
Right. And before we go on to the Q&A portion, I'm kind of just interested in, who's your favorite classical composer? Who speaks to you emotionally?
Yes. I don't know. I had a feeling you might say that, but Debussy perhaps. Yeah. A little outside, maybe. Yeah. Chopin for his how romantic, and Rachmaninoff, because he is like Chopin on acid.
Right, 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 right. Oh, very, very, very interesting. So let me turn it over to our Long Beach Symphony president Kelly Lucera, because I believe we have some questions. So Kelly, it's all yours.
We do, and thank you both for allowing us to be part of such an interesting conversation. I could like literally sit and listen to you talk all night long. This is really exciting for us. I do have a number of questions to ask, one of which is, Paul, during your interview with Dan Rather, you mentioned a memorable experience with when James Brown decided to sit down and play at the keyboard. And I watched that experience again today. The look on your face, you were so excited to have him join the band. What are some other musical experiences where perhaps other artists joined you spontaneously?
You know, there were so many of them over so many of the years, but you absolutely pegged my very favorite, James Brown. He had been, I had idolized him since I saw him as, you know, at the age of about 15 or 16 on film, you know, on Kinescope in something called The Tammy Show, first concert rock and roll movie. He blew me away. And he had a big band himself, you know, that he conducted in his own way, totally different than anybody who ever, you know, he never took a piano lesson in his life, but knocked me out. Other people, I mean, when Carole King did it for the first time, when Sly from Sly and the Family Stone did it way back in the 80s and killed, you know, and Miles Davis's appearance. These are just icons. I was so blessed. I don't know what else to say. There's a little, you know, go ahead.
Any insider secrets? Was any of that ever rehearsed, or were you just?
Oh no, of course. You know, of course it was rehearsed. We were naming numbers from the Letterman show primarily, and we had time, not too much time, less than an hour to rehearse with what we called the acts. You know, if you call Miles Davis an act when he came in, but I would distribute the records. It was almost like this was my innovative idea. So many times, like in the previous bands, in a position like mine, if you got somebody like Carole King coming in, where you give an arranger, you know, the record and he takes it down, then you have the musicians playing the notes that he wrote, his interpretation of what it is. What I did, I gave the record to the guys and gal and said, here, learn it, you know, just like kids do in their garage. And we learned, I hired everybody who had good ears so that we could all learn it right from the record. And it just made a difference. You know, we were not reading an arranger's version of You Got a Friend. You're learning from Carole herself from her record, that kind of thing.
Were there acts that you always wanted to perform with during the show, but haven't yet or didn't get an opportunity to do so?
Well, I don't, you know, of course I missed Sinatra and Elvis. But aside from that, I mean, when I think about getting to play with Tony Bennett, you know, you can't get much closer. I didn't miss Nat Cole too, of course, he was an icon. But I did pretty well. You know, I always thought I wanted to do Aretha, but I got to actually play for her a number of times after that. And so I did pretty well. I love Halsey. I haven't got to play for her yet. Otherwise, I'm doing pretty well.
So during your free time, do you like to listen to different genre now? I mean, how are you getting through this period in time?
You know, I'm listening to a little bit of everything now, and for the first time in a long time, doing that daily Letterman show was something. It was a privilege, but it was an onslaught. It never stopped. We had 10 individual weeks off in the year. Yes, it does sound like a lot, but 5 weeks of shows, 5 shows a week, you know, week in, week out. Even the Stones take a few years off, you know, but we were loud with these things in our ears every single night. And I'm finally decompressing. And yes, well, you know, my wife and I had COVID-19. We were lucky enough that we had way back in March, and thank God we survived it. And now I'm just, you know, finally sort of decompressing from the 33 years of Letterman and listening to a little Debussy and a whole lot of 60s soul music, which is still my favorite.
Mhm. Well, I'm sorry to hear you and your wife got that virus, and you look amazing. So obviously you recovered very well,
Well, it was a long time ago. It was like, in both our cases, it was about a 5-week process. Ours were mild cases. Obviously, we're still here. She did have to go into the hospital for 2 weeks, though. But she was not on a ventilator, and they let her out. You know, but boy, when she went in, I and our 2 kids were quite, needless to say, quite concerned.
Right.
Everything worked out, so thank God.
Our friend Craig wanted to thank you for putting together the Darlene Love's fabulous Baby Please Come Home production on the last Letterman show before Christmas. Have any thoughts about that show? And Darlene Love, she's extraordinary talent.
She is a fabulous talent who was one of my favorite singers as a kid. She had those wonderful records like He's a Rebel and Today I Met the Boy I'm Gonna Marry, and from the Phil Spector Christmas album, this number, Christmas Baby Please Come Home. Mm-hmm. Letterman fell in love with it too, and she started doing it every Christmas, every year since about 1986. And every year we started getting it bigger and bigger and more like that, the record, which was what they used to call the wall of sound then, approaching a symphonic sound, but with thunderous drums. And I kept expanding. I had the budget to get a pretty nice sized string section. And then I'd get the right, and then I'd listen to the record more. Oh, I think there's 4 trombones, get another trombone player. And we finally got it so close, and she got better and better every year until that final year when she just, I don't know, how she did, but she was on top of the piano, just as they say in the classical world, wailing. She was just wailing.
So in terms of future collaborations, I know, of course, that your dream is to perform with the Long Beach Symphony, and we can't wait for that.
It sure is.
Absolutely. What are some other future collaborations that you're looking for, other projects that you dream about?
Yes, dream about. I don't know. I don't want to sound swelled-headed because it had nothing to do with me, but I found myself in this career that awfully hard to top. So this, working with an orchestra really seriously is like a next level for me. I've only done it in my own show once, as you know, in Kalamazoo, Michigan, with their wonderful orchestra. And man, it was just, what a thrill. So there is that. And I've always loved playing in the recording studio as a sideman, where you don't have to worry about the mix or make any decisions about the music or listen over and over again, so I'm starting to do a little more of that now. I love that. I don't have my own studio at home at all. I'm technically illiterate, but I love to play the piano. So, and I'm practicing. You'll be happy to know. Practicing. So by the time I get to Long Beach, I'm going to be in good shape.
Well, we look forward to that too. I dream about that concert back with a live audience, with our fabulous orchestra, with our music director on the podium, and think about your Dan Rather interview again, where you talked about coming back after 9/11 and what that was like. Can you share a little bit about that experience?
Well, you remember, there was nothing like being in New York for it, because it was a war zone. The city became a war zone. And even uptown where I live, you could, I hate to say, you could smell it, the death all the way uptown, and nothing. And the people were somber. And of course, you weren't going to, no shows were broadcasting, and there's certainly no comedy shows. It didn't make any sense to try to laugh. There was nothing funny. And then people started to look to my old boss, David Letterman, to see what he was going to do. And eventually he decided it was time to go to work. He said he saw the mayor, who was Giuliani at that time. Some say a different Giuliani, who was there for us very, like a rock every day on television, assuring us it was going to be okay. And he said, let's get back to work, come into town, go see a Broadway play, spend some money in town. and he inspired Letterman, let's do a show. And then everybody else did a show. But his first show was so much off the top of his head, just vamping and talking about his feelings about what had happened. And it was stirring and surprising. And one of the highlights of my whole career, getting to be there.
Well, I would dream about a reunion between you and David Letterman. Do you ever see him, or do you stay in touch?
We're in touch all the time, as a matter of fact. And I have done, he's in his third season of doing his show on Netflix, which he uses a little piece of mine as his theme. So nice of him. And I talked to him just the other day. So yes, we did a little reunion for charity. That may have been the last live show in New York, For God's Love We Deliver, called Love Rocks, right around middle of March. And he came out, I was kind of emceeing a little, he came out in the middle of my thing as a surprise. Fantastic, and then bang, there were no more shows. Yeah, so that was a little taste of, it was an awful lot of fun, yeah.
I remember, it was a good moment, it was good footage. Love seeing.
Yes, yes, nice. You look wonderful. We dined together in Los Angeles. You may have come all the way in to have that lunch, and I'm so appreciative you did.
Well, it was such a lovely time getting to know you, and I look forward to having you come back and visit Long Beach Symphony, and really thank you for doing this. So I'm time to move on, as we would say. That's the last question we have in the time that we have. But Paul, thank you so much for doing this and joining us. We are so excited to have you come to Long Beach Symphony, and thank you for being a part of this series.
This was great. It's nice to stay in touch, and I thank you very much. And Eckart, of course, great. This was just a teaser. Looking forward to working with you.
Me too. Thank you, Paul. Really appreciate it.
All right, my pleasure. See you later.
And thank you all for joining us at Musically Speaking today. We look forward to bringing you our next program featuring the talented violin virtuoso and recent guest soloist with the Long Beach Symphony, Paul Huang. Thank you again to Mr. Shaffer, Maestro Preu, and we look forward to seeing you all again very soon.
Thank you. Bye.